Love the audience today, the new faces, the friends of friends. You all are doing a great job of bringing your friends, and we're growing our presence. And we got in the big room tonight, so we need more space to network. We need to fill it. So my goal is for next month that we have like 3 more tables filled in the big space. Thank you for coming to our February event. Tonight we're going to learn about threat-informed defense from our friends at Tango, our sponsor for this evening. You hear me say this every time because it's true. This is, even though I am the queen of AITP, it takes a village to put on these shows every month. It's a lot of work behind the scenes to find speakers and topics and programs and communications and social media and the food and the membership and the sponsors and all of the things. So I am really fortunate to serve with this very talented bunch of volunteers on our board of directors for this year. So thank you all for coming along for this ride, 2023. And also we have a lot of new faces and new members, and some new members I met today. So thank you for joining us. We pride ourselves on being that diverse, all-inclusive IT community for you to come and network and feel that you're a part of it. We're not elitist where you have to have a certain job title or work for a company of a certain size to be included, but we love taking people that are new to IT, transitioning in their roles in IT, finding new job opportunities, people that are hiring, our friends that are recruiters at our staffing agencies and companies, people that are independent freelance consultants and CIOs and everyone in between. So really love being a part of this all-inclusive IT community that we have here. And welcome to our new friends. Karen couldn't join us today, but she sent her friend from Charlotte, so thank you for driving up to be with us. And I think we have some other new members that have joined, and Heather just joined, and she's not even on the list because you joined probably after I printed my list, so you'll be on there for next month. So membership, we love our guests. We love our guests of members and our guests of friends. You're welcome to continue to come as a guest, but if you would consider joining as a member, our membership is $195 a year. That's 12 months of programs, dinner, a drink ticket, networking, all the fun that we have here every month. We also have the quarterly subscription, which is our software as a service, like our shorter trial period, which is really good if you are in a job transition, aren't sure how long it will take you for a job transition, and just want to sign up for a short 3-month quarter subscription, and guests are always welcomed. We no longer offer the virtual attendance because Linda was our only virtual attendee. So now we make her come in person.
And we force you to come.
But if you can't come, like I mentioned about Karen, you can send and proxy your seat to a friend. So if there's someone in your team at work, if there's someone in your network that has recently lost their job and experienced risk, if there's a topic that you think would be really interesting to your friend, neighbor, child, whoever, send them in your place and they can join your spot. It's really easy when you go into register for the event, log in for yourself, and then just substitute their name for your name on the ticket. And for more information, please see Brooke, our amazing membership director, or check out our website. Sponsorship, so some of you work for companies that are looking at ways to engage in the community, to build their brand, to build their presence. Maybe you're at a company that's doing a lot of hiring in IT, and we have a lot of people that are looking for new jobs in IT. So we have 2 different ways that you can partner with our chapter as a sponsor. A presenting sponsor where you get to actually have someone from your company speak, like tonight, or a chapter sponsor, and you get your company brand and logo on our website and all the things that we do on social media. So if you are interested in sponsorship opportunities, corporate opportunities, or membership opportunities, see our friend Brooke. And what's up next? So next month is There's International Women Day on March 8th. It's Women in Tech Month, so we have a Women in Tech panel. We're going to have women that represent different levels of technology career paths, including a CIO, on our panel. So we're really looking forward to that on March 9th. And on April 13th, Steve Ellington's going to come and speak to us about the death of your digital legacy, which I think is about being weary of your online presence and social media presence and being protective of and secure of, this information that you're willingly sharing on TikTok. And thank you to our sponsors. So these are some of the sponsors that we have had in the last year that have sponsored us. And thank you again to Tego for being our sponsor tonight. If you didn't get to talk to any of the lovely Tego people that were at the booth in the front or take some fabulous swag with you, please make sure you meet with them before you leave. And I'd like to invite my dear friend Jennifer, the VP of Marketing at Tego, up to share with you a little bit more about what Tego is doing and introduce our guest speaker, Greg.
Hi, everybody.
Look at her fabulous shoes.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jennifer Vosberg. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Tego. First, I'd like to say that I'd like to echo Kate's thoughts on AITP membership. So we joined last year as a sponsor. It's been really, really phenomenal for us. Made a lot of connections, picked up a couple prospects, and just met some really great people. So if you are here for the first time tonight and you're considering being a member or even a sponsor, I highly encourage you to do so. Second, Tego is a IT services company here in Raleigh. We have a variety of services from cloud migration, cloud support, IT networking projects, infrastructure upgrades. We also have Security Audit and Compliance Division, known as the Tego Advisory Services Team, which Greg is in charge of. And this really kind of differentiates us from our competition because we can come in, we can do risk assessments, we can help you with any of your compliance initiatives, security training, incident response, tabletop testing. We always say that it's not a matter of if you'll get attacked, it's when. And so we like to try to come in and help you minimize that risk and make sure that when that happens, you're protected. Whether that means you've tested your backups, you have regular patching, you've trained your employees on how to not click on phishing emails, and a variety of other things. So I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Greg Manson. We have worked together for 7 years, and the great thing about Greg is that he is really good at making security a fun and engaging subject. And so he's going to talk to you tonight about threat-informed defense. And if you have questions, you want more information on Tego, we're happy to send you some information. If you're with Tego, can you just raise your hand for a second? So please come talk to any of us after the presentation if you want some more info. We have a really great event on March 20th that's going to focus on tabletop testing and incident response. It involves a simulated ransomware attack. So it's really fantastic, and I encourage you all to get some more information about that.
All right. Hello, everybody. As Jennifer said, I'm Greg Manson, actually the VP of Advisory Services. You saw all those words up there. None of that really matters. What matters is I'm in the game. I'm here. I have a vested interest in really trying to help everyone when it comes to cybersecurity. And it turns out that this is my second presentation. Where's Jerome? Hey. So 3 more. Do I get a jacket? Okay. I do love being here, and last year I had a similar theme. It was about being tactical with your IT and your cybersecurity decision making. Similar theme here tonight, but this presentation is different. How is it different? Thank you.
I'm the straight man all night.
Well, it's different because what you're going to see is mostly generated using ChatGPT. Who's familiar with ChatGPT? We all should be by now. It's artificial intelligence. I've used it, and if you know me, and I'm looking at some of my wonderful account managers and other staff members, I've been trying to use ChatGPT for everything, even for my personal life. You may not know that I have always aspired to be a screenwriter. Yeah, you gotta have your hobbies. But I was never really good at writing, doing screenplays. So I went to ChatGPT, and my premise was a whole story of lives, trials and tribulations of orthopedists and broken bones. And ChatGPT did such a good job. Now I just need a cast. But AI has its problems, it really does. If you've used it to any degree, you've known that it really spits out kind of generic, vanilla stuff that you have to build on. In fact, because I like to use ChatGPT for everything, I said, hey, let's shortcut this thing, man. I'm gonna have it write some jokes about deep intelligence for my AITP presentation. I couldn't use any of them.
Why?
They were too shallow. Here's why I talk about artificial intelligence in introduction to this presentation. It's not there. There's no shortcut to making decisions. The decisions you make are important. They will impact your agency or company in drastic ways. You make the wrong choice and you're looking for a new job, your company's out of business. You make a partial choice, maybe get lucky and you can recover, but you go through an inordinate world of pain, angst, and suffering. So what we need to be doing is looking at good ways to be more strategic and more tactical about our cybersecurity decision making. And that's what we're going to talk about, the threat-informed defense, which is you actually going and analyzing your environment specifically. So let's get started, shall we? So before we get too much into the tactical parts of this, and that will include the minor attack framework, I want to talk about what your perspective should be when you talk about any cybersecurity strategy, right? What should that be? It should be the core objective, your mission statement is to reduce risk in cybersecurity. The thing is if you ever engage with me or my team, we'll tell you that there's more than just cybersecurity risk. In fact, there's even countervailing risks that you have to consider when you're making decisions. If you can see that, I think I've got the pointer, but every time I try, I won't try.
You
I'll
do,
just point.
it's there, it'll point.
And I hope I didn't just blind somebody. So we have the security risk, the compliance risk, and in the middle is IT operations. And here's the reason that I'm lecturing today. I used to be an IT director, and every decision I made had consequences with operations. It would either take staff time, staff budget, and I had to make decisions that would not impact IT operations too severely. So you're always in a search to balance your security risk, your operational risk, and your compliance risk. And you can send things out of balance. If you weight your operation, like what happens often, any life sciences people here today? So in my world in life sciences, we had, depending on your QA department and your VP of regulatory, you may end up spending a lot and investing into your compliance initiatives. But what does that do? It drags down IT operations and it actually sends up your IT risk. Because we'll all walk out of here saying compliance risk, compliance ain't security. Can we say ain't? I don't know. Bad English. And then you can go the other way, right? You can focus on security and you may even drag up the risk with your compliance. You can make things secure. You can make change in your environment that actually impacts your compliance, especially if it's a validated system. You're making just wholesale on security decisions to lock things down, you may actually be impacting the systems and adding compliance risk. But look what happened to IT operations, now it's going the other way. So you're putting more money in either direction into IT operations. So we're searching for the balance. We're gonna get the balance today. And who knows who Jimmy Breslin is? Who's Jimmy Breslin? A reporter for the New York Times, right? Bushy eyebrows, he was always famous to say about his stories. Now, there are 8 million stories, and this is paraphrased, 8 million stories in New York City, and this is one of them. There are 8 million ways to be strategic and tactical. This is one of them, but it will get you thinking about two things. It will get you thinking about tactical decision making. It will also introduce you to a way to use a tactic, and that is the MITRE ATT&CK framework and Navigator, which I think is exciting stuff. I'm sure you'll find it exciting too. So who remembers this guy? I'm looking at people I know who were in my presentation last year. This is Chasing Zero. What was the general theme of Chasing Zero? I won't task you to test you, but I will say that Chasing Zero is all about identifying the CVE environmental risk in your environment. We actually have a tool that allows you to test by CVE on your environment. And I'm not getting into that. I did that last year. You can go check the recording, right, Rich?
That's right.
But it is part of the similar theme that we're going to carry forward. Who's ever thrown spaghetti at the wall? When you were 2? Well, I still do it. Yeah, it's exactly right. You got to test it to see if your noodles are good. Well, I tell you, so no one else has thrown spaghetti at the wall? Yeah? Okay. How many of you have willy-nilly just ordered renewal for your Sentinel-1 license, or your EDR, or your SIM-SOC solution, or your breach detection solution, or your vulnerability management solution, or your advisory team that comes in and does risk assessments? Probably a lot of you. It's a lot like throwing spaghetti at the wall. You're just doing it. Everybody else is doing it. Let's throw this all at the wall and let's see what sticks. We don't need to be doing that. We can do it through threat-informed defense. Today's docket, I like to get fancy with the source every once in a while. So, agenda was boring and we went with docket. We're going to do terms and definitions. We're going to go through a description and concept of what the evidence-based threat defense is and evidence-based security. And then I'm going to walk you through MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. Just foreshadowing, how many of you have used Navigator? Outstanding, because you're going to learn at least one thing tonight. Okay, coffee time. What does Greg mean when he says it's coffee time? Well, this will make everybody happy. I've got Starbucks gift cards to give out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pop up some words or acronyms, and I want to know what those acronyms mean for the definitions that we're going to use for the rest of the presentation. And this is a pretty sweet deal, right? $5 Starbucks gift card, that's awesome. It's not really, I mean, it's a gesture, people. You too can go home with a $5 Starbucks gift card. So let's get started, shall we? Where's my skydiver? Let's boogie. All right. So these are definitions that you're going to hear throughout the rest of the presentation. Who wants to tell me what TTP stands for? Toilet paper. That's not it. Although if you spend money, you're wasting a lot of budget that might need some toilet paper. What did we have somebody? What did we have? Close, you're getting closer than toilet paper. Anybody? God, this burned a hole in my pocket. Okay, tactics, techniques, and procedures. Tactics, techniques, and procedures. So class is not doing well. I'm going to have to grade on a curve. Okay, I know there's a person in this room who knows what MITRE is. And in fact, she told me. So I'm going to ask you to tell me what MITRE is. And you'll get a gift card if you give me the right answer. This is Marcia also.
Olson. MITRE came out of the MIT research arena. They're in Bedford, Massachusetts, and also in DC.
Good enough.
Close?
Here's a card. Enjoy your coffee. They're a government contracted agency that's focused on cybersecurity now. Because they have government funding and input from everybody, including people that work in the security industry, they've become the gold standard here in the States for referencing anything with regard to security and even providing plans. I have many links at the end of my presentation that I suggest you click on to see all of the things that MITRE can do for you. And then attack. We're talking about attack. Come on. Wait, I think we got somebody. I like that. You're close.
Tactics and techniques. Attack tactics and techniques.
And common knowledge. Okay, that's a split answer, but since it's only $5 gift cards, who said common knowledge? There you go. Thank you, Brett. Whoa, shoot. Get it? All right. Okay, so let's introduce you to the evidence-based approach to security. And we talk about threat intelligence. The idea, and as I preached last year, you're trying to look, you have a universal threats. And it's really difficult to decide what threats are going to put risk into your environment. Why did I say it that way? Because threat isn't a problem if you don't have a vulnerability. If your environment can't be exploited by that threat, you don't have risk. Threat plus vulnerability equals risk. So you need to have an idea of what the risks are in your organization and what threats are actually facing you. That's the whole gist of this presentation. And then identify the TTPs. What does TTP mean, everybody? Everything. Tactics, techniques, procedures associated with those risks. So there is actually, when I talked about last year, it was a very narrow example. We had CVEs that come in at 9.8. You go ahead, your IT security, and then you panic. I'm going to have to patch this. I'm going to throw change management out the window. Who cares what QA tells me? And then I'm going to go in and hope, because I threw that spaghetti at the wall, that fixes the problem. It turns out you never really realize it may not impact your organization at all. You know, if it's a print spool or CVE and your printers are all isolated and firewalled off from the internet, the threat actors probably aren't going to be able to go after it. So what we're doing here is we're going to take it on to a higher level today by using MITRE ATT&CK and actually identifying the TTP, the threat actors TTPs, and how it applies to your organization, and actually you can yield mitigating recommendations handed to you through some good old-fashioned work, not through ChatGPT. Although there is a new cheat code. Did y'all learn about the new? I gotta talk about this, I'm sorry. The new cheat code on ChatGPT. This isn't a joke. Who knows about it? Okay, so if you're interested and you actually want to get something that's meaningful and maybe a joke that is applicable on deep intelligence, go out and type ChatGPT Dan, or in your commands, type Dan. Dan is the shortcut that the programmers use to say, do it as is now, I believe. and actually will circumvent all the protective controls that they have around ChatGPT. It can get quite dangerous, but it's worth checking out. That's my inside tip for you. Maybe I'll get better jokes. Detection and testing, this is another thing. So you have to be informed. You may have thrown the spaghetti at the wall, but something's going to stick. Something's going to be giving you feedback and information. You need to be looking at that information, be able to parse through it so that you can add it to what actual threats you're facing and use that to make decisions for future projects, investment, and maybe even changes in your environment. And of course, testing. You got to test this stuff, and I'll talk about that and how important it is, how often neglected it is. And then, of course, feedback loop, adjusting your controls. So we're going to talk about building the threat intelligence through the attack navigator. And I have screenshots. I wanted to do a demo, but we decided that it would be better to do screenshots. But specifically, I'm going to walk you through, in this case, it's going to be, we're going to pretend that we are an organization in the defense industrial base. There's a specific reason why I mentioned that. A little sidebar, TAGO is a registered practitioner organization working with the North Carolina Military Business Center to help organizations comply with CMMC, which is a new regulation based on 800-171. And have I bored anybody with that yet? But it's interesting to see because there'll be some threat actors that you may be familiar with. And then, so we're going to do a search. We're going to identify the threat groups that are going to go after businesses like us because we're in the defense industrial base. Then we're going to go look at the actual tactics. We're going to look at MITRE, but we're going to look at it as it applies to that threat actor. And that threat actor is directly targeting you as a company. So, and then we're going to use attack to actually tell us what we can do to mitigate that risk. It's hugely powerful. It's incredible. So let's get started, shall we? And these links are in the back, and these are the boring screenshots, but it will get us to where we need to be. We go in, and we do groups.miter.org, and you will get this, or you can do miter.org/groups, and you'll get to this screen. This screen, I would highly recommend. What's Sun Tzu? What's his famous thing? Know thy enemy. Who knows the quote? Well, the art of war, but what's the quote? Anybody? Something about know thy enemy. Either way, it's logical. You need to know what your enemies are doing. This groups page is really fascinating. You can go out and you can just start perusing groups. You see tons of APTs. You'll see things like Leviathan, and we'll be talking about them later. But it's interesting because they give you the whole history. They give you the background. Who's contributed to this? Everybody. My team has contributed to some of the write-ups on these threat groups that have been involved in attacks that we've had to work. The FBI is involved with it. The industry, cybersecurity industry is contributing to this to give you really meaningful information, to just get an idea, like a LinkedIn profile of the threat groups that you're dealing with. But in itself, that doesn't help us identify how it's going to impact us, right? Remember, we're a company in the defense industrial base. What do we do, Krista? What's our business? We make weapons systems. Let's say the Patriot missile. Why not? So we are a manufacturer in the defense industrial base. We're all on that same page, right? Can we agree that we're there? Okay. So we actually want to go and find out the threat actors that are impacting the threat or the defense industrial base. So what do? Well, we're going to go up here to search. And you're all going to say, Greg, this is the most unsophisticated, deflated balloon, disappointing thing. I thought you were going to show me something really neat and fancy and sophisticated like ChatGPT. Turns out it's about as functional as ChatGPT. So what we're going to do is by clicking on that search button, we're going to put in our industry. And here's what you can do. Because we're all in the defense industrial base making Patriot missiles today, you may not be when you go home tonight and go to work tomorrow. You may be working in healthcare or the life sciences, or you may be working in healthcare or financial services. Type that industry out there in the search, and you'll be surprised what you get. So we put in defense industrial base. Interesting. There's a little bit of nuance. You have to know what your industry's called. If you don't, you may want to consider
A new job.
new job. And I apologize. Screenshots are no fun. We could zoom in, but so I'll highlight what we're doing. But what it's essentially doing is it's listing groups by name that have been associated that target the defense industrial base. And you can do this, and that's what I'm encouraging you to do, is to go to the search on your industry, and look at the threat actors that have been targeting the various sectors. And you can see, I'll read it for you because you probably can't in the back of the room. But we're looking at Leviathan. Leviathan is the name of the threat group. Leviathan has 5,000 aliases, right? Leviathan also has roll-up agencies. Here's the beauty of attack is that they'll actually roll them into one threat actor group, and you can see all of the different aliases and roll-up companies that are actually working with Leviathan or are part of Leviathan. But we can see that Leviathan, where they're from, the Hunan State Security Department, Hunan, China, threat actor. If you ever see one of my CMMC presentations, I talk about all the weapon systems that have been directly copied from exfiltrating data in the supply chain. Leviathan is absolutely part of that. Oops, let me go back. But what we see is we can see the other industries here. So we have biomedical. So maybe those life sciences people may want to look at Leviathan too. It's pretty much anything that's cutting edge technology in the military and life sciences space. Leviathan goes after.
I like flying kitten. That sounds really scary.
Flying kitten. There's
Sounds really scary.
nasty panda.
How did they come up with these names?
Yeah.
For anybody that plays video.
How did they come up with the name?
That Leviathan is like a giant sea creature.
That's a great question. Here's a gift card. No, primarily, that's a good question, but it also highlights the interaction and the input that MITRE gets. They'll actually take it from the researchers. So sometimes the threat actors will be on the dark web and they want to establish themselves and they'll call themselves, I don't know, Dark Side or Angry Bear. And that they'll start their posts and all their interaction on the dark web when they're posting all the ransom and all the keys and all the information they exfiltrated, they'll put their name on it. A lot of time, and sometimes that name's used if the researchers know. It's primarily researcher-driven given the names. So these are English understandable names that we're using to define and organize the group. But great question. So let's click on Leviathan. There's a link right there. We just searched for it. And they give you even more details about Leviathan. Here you can read all about what they are, a cyber espionage group. They'll show you various attacks they've been known to participate in. And they will give you all sorts of fun information about the associated groups. Remember I told you about that. And they start to talk about some of the techniques Leviathan uses. But you know what? Reading from top down, I'm a visual guy. I like to see things clearly. The beauty, and this is the wild moment, so get on the edge of your seat. Navigator, and we're going to click on this button right here. When we click on it, it's going to open Navigator, and it's going to give us a visual depiction of how Leviathan likes to navigate the TTPs, the techniques,
Tactics.
procedures. I gotta stop here, okay? I'm beating in the TTPs. I want you to understand there's differences, right? It all sounds the same. It's all TTP. It's different. So what is really a TTP? Okay, let's think of it like this. I'm gonna give you a purely unrelated example. We all have a strategy to stay healthy. That's our strategy. Our tactic is to exercise more. Our technique is to go do jazzercise. God, that's funny. That's just it. Jazzercise. No, to do yoga or to do any type of exercise. And the procedures is you buying a yoga mat, you getting in your car driving to the yoga studio, doing yoga. Those are the procedures. You see how that progresses? It's actually a progression. And the bulk of our action and when we make decisions are not in the tactics, it's in the techniques. And what you're about to see will show you the techniques primarily that Leviathan uses in a graphical way. It's hard to see, so I'll help you. You can see things that are black background. You can see things that are blue background. What's in blue background are the TTs that Leviathan uses to execute an attack. This has been researched. It has input from thousands of people across the world, really, mostly friendlies. It's been validated, and it will tell you various things that they like to do. And different threat actors have different things. Why is this important? We know we're in the defense industrial base. We know Leviathan is one of the top 5 threat actors that we have to face. And now we know what Leviathan does when they attack us. Why wouldn't we want to build protections focused on Leviathan or trying to focus on Leviathan? Now we have the blueprint. We have the playbook. Just for fun, you know, you're familiar with MITRE in itself. You know, it goes through the various progressions, reconnaissance, establishing a foothold, persistence, privilege escalation, execution, etc. For fun, let's just see how Leviathan executes an attack. And we'll go to one of their favorite TTs, which is the PowerShell. You know, they're going to use some type of PowerShell attack. So we're interested in that. There's variants of a PowerShell attack. So we want to actually click in, and we're going to go down here, right click, down, click, view technique. And this is where it gets really fun. Because we're wanting now, we all agree, we're all on one huge IT department. We got the security team, we're making Patriot missiles, we're looking at Leviathan, we agree that they're a threat actor we want to know. We want to know what we should be doing to actually address what our identified threat is. Now we can go to their techniques. Techniques will tell you about what they're doing, and then they'll actually give you what's most important, the mitigations. So some of this is a generic kind of example because we're looking at executions. Each one of the fields that were identified in the framework itself that were highlighted in blue will yield a result that's like this. And it can give you the steps that you need to take to mitigate the vulnerability. This stuff is deep. It's hugely powerful. This, again, one tactic that we're looking at. So if I was an IT director or I was a CISO, I would take serious time to make sure that I had people doing this research. Or I would make sure that the people that are providing the security to me are customizing the solution that we're using on my industry, my specific business, so I have a more effective, efficient cybersecurity program. So you can go through and we get the list of mitigations and detection. You can follow those and then go and get feedback. You can go to the red team and make sure that when they're doing a penetration test, if I'm a red team, how many of you have even asked who does penetration testing for their company? Has it done? Is it aware of it? Do you know if they're even asking the red team to look at the common TTPs based on your specific business? He's gonna ask. And if they aren't, they're not aware of it. And here's the thing I'm criticizing. I'm an auditor, right? And I do have to do penetration testing. We typically have a third party do it for us. We bring it in, we look at the results, we look at the methodology that the threat or the hackers, the white hat hackers, we call them threat analysts or threat simulators, have done. And when I do an audit for a company, let's say it's a PCI review that we're doing, we look, 90% of the time, what we find are standard, heavily biased protocols for doing the test. So essentially, there's so many penetration testers out there. I'm not being critical because there are good ones. There are good ones. But a lot of them are just applying the standard techniques standard tactics that may not even be applicable in your environment, or they're in a lower probability than some of the other tactics. Something to think about if you're a decision maker and you're looking at that. Are they looking at the tactics and techniques and trying to exploit those? Or are they just using what they're good at, what they learned in their white hat certification or their CEA certification? I'm not being critical, okay? But it is something you need to be thinking about when you're engaging, because that stuff costs a lot of money. All right. So we navigated the attack framework with Navigator, and we got to a point where we're also wanting to get feedback, because this is part of the threat-informed defense. Threat-informed defense includes the tools that you already have. You may have made the investment, having done this process of looking at your specific threats. But what are some of the sources that you're ingesting and you should be looking at? You should be getting reports, looking at EDR. What's flagging in EDR? Is it something where you're seeing constant footholds being established? You know, maybe they're being resolved, but you're seeing constant set of footholds being established. Then what techniques are being used to establish that foothold? Your EDR, and you can name them, any of the big handful of EDRs that you know, 7-1, CrowdStrike, Carbon Black, they all are capable of yielding this. In fact, they can give you pretty neat reports based on MITRE. But you know what I see customers doing? Again, this is from the audit side. I'm like, what is it? You reviewed your penetration test. We looked at, you're reviewing your EDR logs, you know, you got the SOC doing it. You know, what are they doing looking specific to your agency? They're not, they're just showing common, every industry tactics and techniques that are being used and how you're addressing those with your EDR solution. Today, you need to start thinking about how it's impacting you. And that's an important thing. And how do you do that? One of the 8,000 ways is to use the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. I've already opined on the red team and what they're looking at and what they should be focusing on. I hope that they are looking at the threats that are most likely to impact your company when they're executing their tests. And all of this information gets fed into a feedback loop. And actually, I skipped over one thing that's kind of oftentimes overlooked because it's so painful. But you know what's really painful? When we talk about DR tabletop test, what is that? That's a team going in and looking at your disaster recovery incident response plan. Then they apply a scenario. If they're a good team, self-promotion, like Tago Advisory Services, we will go in and actually look at your TTPs. And guess what we use? What do you think we use when we're planning scenarios to test your DR IRP? What do we use? MITRE. That's actually true. So you know, you can have it one or the other way. You hire a team that's going to do DR testing for you, and they're going to pick, you know what, ransomware. Of course, and it'll be a generic ransomware tech. You know there are different flavors of ransomware. You know that there are different techniques that ransomware is deployed. You know that ransomware is used in different ways after execution. You're doing a generic ransomware test. Is it actually going to apply to your environment and actually give you meaningful feedback to your tabletop test to your plan? And it may not. But testing this is something that people often neglect. They really do. It's horrible. I guess I just stand on my auditor podium because I can be critical of like as if I'm not on the other side and actually helping people do risk assessments and implementation. The auditor and me, because I got two personalities, will say we need to be looking at these things, and we're not. So all of these things, and again, on the testing is really important, but taking this information and feeding it back into all of your plans. Look at that. This is a huge graphic. This is a fun trivia question. We've got 2 cards left. Quick, where did I generate that image? Oh, you guys. OpenAI's DALL-E product. Who said yeah? He said yeah. Anybody that's gave me, I mean, you gave me props. I get a card, man. Look at that. That's sophisticated. 2 arrows with feedback loop in the middle. Man, AI is so powerful and deathly scared. So the importance is to take that and feed it back into your plans, primarily your DR plan for that DR test, but looking at your specific EDR solutions, and they may be inadequate. They may be inadequate because the teams that were implementing them didn't do it following any methodology. They did it by throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping they got it right in configuration. Okay. I've given my team a gratuitous self-plug. I summarize talking about Tego Advisory Services because I believe, and would you doubt me if I didn't think that I believe in myself, right? That we follow the best way of leveraging MITRE ATT&CK in the services that we provide. Here's what I'm going to say to be neutral, Jerome, is that you should be looking for this in any advisory team that you're working with. Seriously start thinking about it. We talked, ChatGPT's been around since November of 2022. It's a topic everybody knows about. I'm making jokes about it. 3 months later. These are the concepts. Planting the seed, the oak, to become the tree. Right here, with what you should be looking at in your acquisition of products and services. So as I mentioned, we leverage Navigator in our risk assessment. We do a thing called a risk prioritized management plan. Even if we're doing a CMMC compliance assessment, we're actually prioritizing the gaps by the risk to the company. Because we want to see that balance. Remember at the beginning, you may be getting your compliance over here by just addressing them top down. Hey, why don't we go and focus on risk while we're doing compliance and not kill operations teeter-tottering back and forth. Identifying the managed risk for compliance. As I mentioned, the plans will actually usually are part of the compliance report, but also the actions that you're taking will most likely translate into one of the frameworks. So attestations for SOC 2, ISO 27001, CMMC. Focused penetration test, I can't get into that enough. It's almost laughable what's going on in the penetration testing world. There's some good stories, but it's become a checkbox, and that's a shame because it is a huge way to give input into your decision making. And add a little bit of attack into that, and an attack capable product. So I mentioned some of those tools. You want to be making sure that your EDR is going to be able to yield reports with the background of the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And be in consideration of it. So, some other things, I'd like to talk about this, and it is actually compliance in our security assessments. The other thing is a little bit of off-topic note, but when you're doing assessments, it's important is we're seeing people, and everybody's starting to go after attestations, certifications, risk assessments. What you as an organization, whatever you're participating in, we're seeing people, when they know the auditors are coming and the assessors are coming, you have this curve. You know, you're not worried about it until an attack happens or the auditor shows up. And when you hear the auditors coming, you worry, you panic, you scramble, put it all together, you get a decent report, and then what do? You put it on the shelf, forget about it. It's really unfortunate. And one of the things, and you can't, why is that? Why is that? Why is that? I don't know. Actually, I do. Well, there's instant gratification. There's some people that are adrenaline junkies. When I was an IT director, I kind of thought it was cool to run right up until the FDA showed up. And then panic and make my team scramble and work on Saturdays and Sundays. That was fun. But I'm also kind of a sadist. So the thing is that what I want to encourage, and I show this graph to kind of convey a point, to treat your risk, your analysis of risk, your work is continuing. And you'll always have some pain points, there'll always be a little bit of drop off. But you need to, if either it's with an advisory team or with your internal IT teams, you need to commit to making this a real-time activity. Why security initiatives fail? Why do we still have security incidents today? It's not because we aren't well-intentioned, it's because we have other operations, it's because it's difficult to find people to do this type of work, and there's just a lack of priority. So keep it on your top priority, so when an incident happens, you're gonna be able to respond with a threat-informed defense. Here are the links. Check them out. There's some cool things here. The CREF, yeah, I think CREF, I'm asking myself, Greg, did CREF drop Saturday? I think it dropped Saturday night. That's a framework, it's cool, it's resiliency. Is it another concept? Maybe, Jerome, for next year, if you guys invite me, I'll talk about resiliency.
Put it down.
Okay. But resiliency is a whole new concept. So you're gonna expect that the attack's gonna happen, and you're gonna try to minimize the overall impact of that. And that's CREF, which is the last link. Obviously, there's Tego data, there's the groups that I talked about, and then being able to go to MITRE Collab, where you can actually see the sausage being made. So I gave you those summaries, that you got the nice paragraphs, you got the mitigating steps and all that defined. That was all developed in Collab. So, and I'm not talking about Google Collab, I'm talking about MITRE Collab. And that is our presentation.
Can you take some questions from the audience?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take some questions.
Questions here. I'm going to hand you the mic so that everyone can hear.
So given how the bad actors must be working on it night and day, how do you ever get something that's a solution that, I mean, the next day isn't completely garbage?
I think that's a question we all recognize. You got limited budget, you got limited IT staff. How do you got threat actors where it's a business. You got Leviathan, which is part of the Chinese army. They are there to do that. You have the unique situation where we're a free country and our defense arguably should do more, but they're never going to be requiring us into or putting us into a box where we'd be constrained in the information flow. And that would be hugely impactful to the economy. So here's the news for you. You have to be able to figure it out. And figuring it out is starting to be strategic and tactical about your decision making. It's looking at buying solutions. I wholly recommend that anybody that doesn't have General Dynamics style IT and security teams, that you look at hiring a really good security operations center. It's a third party, that's their business. So they can afford to have people work 24/7. We did a calculation, I'll get to you in a second, when I was working a couple of jobs back, on the number of FTEs it would take, staff, including vacations, sick leave, turnover, you need 6 full-time staff to work a security operations center. And that's assuming that you can keep them. Because when they get their experience, guess where they go? The next highest paying job. Sir, you had a question.
Yeah,
Let me,
I was just gonna ask, like, you talked about, finding out who your threat actors are, and nowadays, like, companies have so much information and so many people want so many things that it gets to a point where you're gonna have multiple threat actors coming at multiple different angles. How do you suggest that companies help protect themselves from various companies coming from multiple different angles and using multiple different tactics?
That's a great question. To summarize what I think I heard is, Greg, it's great that you can focus on threat actors that are on your industry, but honestly, you may still be a target for anybody, right? And then what do you do? And do we go back to the spaghetti on the wall thing? Sometimes, but what we've done is when we've made our decisions going forward, we've been looking at, it's all probability. The insurance industry lives in probability. You have to kind of do that too. And we'll get into boring if you're studying for your CISP, you know all the calculations on the annualized loss return and all those probable numbers that you can put in. But at the end of the day, it's coming down to where you can put your resources, where you're most at risk to get the best return. And you could do, with researchers and advisory team, identify where the overlap is with the other threat actors. You know, that framework you saw, those are the tactics and techniques. Other threat actors may be using those same tactics and techniques also. So it's impossible. It's a universe. It's an infinite number of threat actors out there. You have to try to dial this in. That due diligence, to that effort yields some benefit if there is an incident. One, you may have minimized the impact. Two, you've shown that you've taken aggressive and a thoughtful action to prevent an incident from happening, which will help you get your cyber insurance. It will keep the regulators at bay. Again, to that point, you may have minimized the impact and be resilient. And that's why Jerome's going to have you back next year to talk about cyber resilience, to be able to withstand the attack. Because the hurricane, what do you do in a hurricane? You can't prevent it. You can shutter up the windows, you can build your house on stilts, you can do a lot of things to try to minimize the fact that you're going to get totally blown down. And that's what we're talking about with resilience. So thank you for segueing next year's presentation.
To follow up on this question, so the CMMC basically now become like a life cycle for an IT organization, especially from the defense perspective?
So I'll restate your question. CMMC has it become a life cycle? Yeah, so the certification has in itself a 3-year plan for review, periodic review with the 3CPAO and C3PAO. But that's not good enough. Within that, you have an internal audit component that is constantly testing the controls and evidence artifacts supporting those controls for 171. That should be an active process, and you should be doing feedback and getting feedback from things such as tabletop testing. So it is a life cycle. It by itself, with regard to the way you're certified and keep your certification, but also within that process to maintain. Because if you don't keep that feedback loop going and keep it alive and making sure that your systems are working the way they should, you're going to lose your certification. And some organizations may go out of business because they're 80%. All we do is make Patriot listen. If we're not CMMC compliant, we're out of business. Jerome.
There was a beginning comment about March of this. I missed the date. What was that?
Oh, yes. Well, she's over there. And that's actually great because what she's talking about is our Save the Data event. And I would ask that you talk to Jennifer, who's in the back of the room, or Krista, or Melissa, if she's still here. And they'll give you the information. What Save the Data is a really special event we do with our partner Rubric. It's not a sales event. What it is the opportunity for you to get your leadership into a meeting so they can experience the pain, the angst, even the consternation that goes with an incident. And you're reading scripture, sitting around a table, they got a video, and you're assigned a role. You may be the general counsel, you may be the CFO, and what they're doing is they're walking through, and you start to see how every single person in an organization is impacted by it. What I love, when having done incident command, is you find out, and being an IT supporter. I love my IT teams. I'm an auditor, but I'm there for IT. And what I love about Save the Data is it shows you that after 3 days, it's not an IT problem anymore. They think it is. It's not. And by day 5, everybody realizes it was a leadership problem, it's a legal problem, it's a financing problem. And you start to, it's really good because it starts to show how business decisions evolve from a cyber incident. That's the secret sauce. So if I'm a CFO or I'm the chief business, what do they call them in marketing or sales? Chief Business
Revenue.
Development Officer?
Revenue.
Revenue Officer, yes. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer, I'm thinking I don't even have to worry about that. But what you see is that Chief Revenue Officer, he has to stop sales. He has to close down the CRM because it's involved in the attack. He doesn't know when he can bring it up. And he starts losing sales and he realizes his job's on the line because he's gonna really look bad for the next 3 quarters of maybe the year, or probably just have to quit. And you start to see where the other parts of the organization are impacted. It's so powerful and easily done, and you walk away feeling kind of like you've been dragged through the gutter. But the best thing is, Josh and I have been in incidents before. What I love about Save the Data is you kind of trigger that pain again, but you walk away because you're in a safe space. But you made an impression on other people that were in that may not be thinking about your disaster recovery plan, for instance. When's the Save the Data? March 20th.
There's only 15 spots left. So if I were you, I would register pretty soon so that we can get in on the action.
Register pretty soon so you can get on the action. Only 15 slots left. I'll be there, and maybe I will use ChatGPT Dan and come up with some better artificial intelligence. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. Very much is.
But it's like no real consequences. Like it's like a fire drill. Practice before it really affects your environment. I love that. Jennifer told me I can't come, but I see there's too many other events. But you all, there's room for the 15 of you in this room to go. Now you can be a collector of these.
Yeah.
You got one last year, so now this is another coin for your collection. You're one of the few elite people that have been invited back as a speaker that can have more than one in their collection. And that's a limited edition.
Yeah.
We're not making any more, so keep, but thank you. And if your IT security career comes to an end because you have protected all the companies and there's no more threats, America's Got Talent, comedian, like right up your alley. I think that's a good second career for you.
If I can't get $5
$1 million.
maybe Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, Saturday Night Live, America's Got Talent. My kids and I are watching it right now. I think you've got a career there as a comedian. So thank you very much, Greg, Tego. We loved having you. Hopefully people learned something. And Jerome, it sounds like you're on the hook to find us a ChatGPT speaker for an upcoming month, because it sounds like it's a topic that everyone's interested in. Okay, sounds good. We've got March, Women in Tech. You can continue networking until you find your way out the door, and thank you all again for coming tonight. It was fun. Thank you.